What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another tier list. That's right, we're doing the thing again that we've been doing, and this time it is for the current Conjuring universe, now the Conjuring universe as a whole. It's a great concept, and really it's one that's going to continue on because these movies are made on the cheap and they make lots of money, and there's an interesting world here with interesting characters. It's just some of these subsequent spin-offs have not been received the best by critics, but this is my official tier list. My opinion is definitely going to differ from yours. I need you guys in the comment section down below. Let me know, how do you feel about these movies in general? Are you a fan of the Conjuring franchise, the Annabelle franchise, and this universe as a whole? And let's start on this tier list like we always do. This is also somewhat of a ranking of this franchise. To see my full ranking, get in the description down below and check out that letterbox list that has all of my scores, what I gave it out of 5 stars, so on and so forth. Okay, we're starting at the beginning here of what's on the template, not the beginning in general, and we are actually going to start with The Nun. And The Nun was a movie that, you know, starts out something that was shown in The Conjuring 2. You get a little glimpse at The Nun, and what they did in that film with The Nun, I thought was really cool. The Nun looked fantastic in the second Conjuring film, and this was really kind of the beginning of, okay, we're gonna show you a glimpse at this character, and then we're gonna give that character its own spin-off movie. Now it's turning into something that happens so often. We got Annabelle from that. In the most recent Annabelle movie, we got to look at so many different creatures and demons that are going to get their own spin-off film. Absolutely, no doubt. So The Nun was really one of the first, other than Annabelle, to do that. And this movie had so much potential. This film could have been extremely scary. Scary to hit those levels that The Nun hit in The Conjuring 2, because in The Conjuring 2, I thought The Nun was horrifying. The way that the camera moved around the character and just the lore that was built with Lorraine Warren. Unfortunately, the movie comes out and it just feels like a very cheap attempt to build something around this character, but something that did not have a lot of thought put into it. This was a very dark movie, and I don't mean dark thematically. I mean, it was just hard to look at. It was dreary. It was a bit dull. It fell flat from a narrative standpoint, and it just wasn't all that entertaining. And don't get me wrong, I love a good period piece, and this was set at a time that could have given us something extremely creepy, and there were some good attempts at scares, and they tried hard with certain aspects, but then other aspects of the film fell completely flat, and certain characters played a role in the movie, and you're just like, why are they in there in the first place? Now, it's a similar complaint I had to the first Annabelle. I'm not going to say it's as bad as the first Annabelle, but I do think, unfortunately, The Nun is a bad film in the Conjuring franchise. So much potential with that character, did not manage to hit that potential. Next up is La Llorona. Now, this was a film that I was very excited for because I love the cast. I think Linda Cardellini is one of the more interesting people in Hollywood. Now, her being cast as this character, it did strike some controversy, but that did not bother me as much because you have all of these supporting characters and great lore. Now, I didn't know about the character of La Llorona. I had only heard some stories here and some elements here, and I know that it is based on something that exists, as is a lot of the stuff in the Conjuring universe, but there's so much potential for something like La Llorona, and unfortunately, once again, in the same vein of The Nun, they just did not execute on that potential. And this is actually a film, when I first saw it, I'm like, yeah, you know, it's not very good, but it's not necessarily a bad movie. But then the more I thought about it, and the more I just pictured what this film could have been, the more I just started to hate on it. And I hate to feel that way about these films, but it feels like all of these movies that aren't The Conjuring, the more I think about them, the more I dislike them. And I'm not sitting here trying to hate on horror movies. I know some people are going to watch this video and they're going to say, Austin, you hating on these movies. I got it on my Pixar list. You're just a hater. And I don't want to be. I love the horror genre. I like when it works. But the Conjuring franchise, they just keep pushing out. And here's one thing about this movie in particular. I didn't even know. I had heard rumors. I didn't know it was part of the Conjuring franchise until you're watching the movie and you're like, is that Annabelle? Like, did Annabelle just pop up in this movie? And Annabelle did pop up, so this makes it officially part of the Conjuring universe. Now, they didn't necessarily do the thing in this movie where you're like, oh, we're going to take this character and we're going to spin it off. Oh, we're going to tie this movie in as well as we possibly can, tie a little bow on it at the top to the Conjuring franchise. No, they didn't do that. They didn't shoehorn things in that nature. And once again, Linda Cardellini is a great actress, and her chemistry with her kids was there, but the story based around it and just the shots of La Llorona walking around and trying to get into the house, and the camera movement wasn't all that interesting. And what these movies are missing that aren't the Conjuring films, they're missing James Wan. Now, I know he's a producer on the movies, but he's not a director. When he directs the film, you can tell a huge difference as opposed to when he just produces it, and I don't even think he's a hands-on producer. Now, I'm sure he picks the cast and picks people who are going to work on it, but it's the script and it's the execution that always falls flat. And the more I thought about La Llorona after I watched it, came out this year, the more I've went down on it. So I'm actually going to put La Llorona as well in the bad tier. Let's keep this trend going, man. I hate doing this because I love horror films, but this franchise, it just needs to step it up. Let's see if Annabelle can do that. Nope. We're going to put Annabelle on the awful tier. I'm going to get this out of the way. I'm going to do it really quick. The first Annabelle movie is one of the most shameless attempts at spinning off a character from a different franchise that I've ever seen. This was honestly the biggest cash grab of all of them, of the entire bunch. And it takes the concept of, okay, we're going to take this character, we're going to spin it off like I've been talking about this entire video, but it just does it in a way that botches everything, right? This movie was not scary. It was so poorly executed. The direction was the worst of all of the movies in the franchise, and I didn't even like the cast all that much. The thing the other two Annabelle movies have done well, they have cast the perfect actors and actresses, the perfect characters. This movie didn't do it. It fell flat in all regards. It is the cliche and conventional studio horror film that they pushed out to make money. It did make money, enough money to warrant more Annabelle movies that did pay off in a sense compared to this one, but still you got the first Annabelle movie and it was just, yeesh. All right, we need to shed some positivity. Let's shed some light onto this franchise and show its full potential. Now, Annabelle Creation is not its full potential, right? But I did find this movie a lot more watchable than the first. I found it a lot more entertaining, and there was actually something here to look at and go, you know what? This director, in David F. Sandberg, has potential. Sure enough, the guy went on to do Shazam. Very different movie from Annabelle Creation, but he also did Lights Out, and I like that movie as well. Now, Annabelle Creation, where I differ from some other people is other people think this movie is genuinely like really good, like a super solid film with solid scares. I do think it has solid scares. I do think it has solid characters, but it still suffers from similar things that these other bad to awful films suffer from. And because of those things, I can't necessarily say this is a great movie or an awesome movie. It gets close to good, but I'm not going to put it on the good tier. I'm going to put it on the okay tier because I do think this is an okay movie. And sometimes, especially when you're comparing to other movies, and look at this tier list, guys, okay is okay. You don't have to be great. You don't even have to be all that good. If you're okay, that is passable, especially for the Annabelle trilogy. Now, it is technically a trilogy, part of this larger franchise, but yeah, I like this. I think what this director did in Sandberg, he established an atmosphere that these other directors have not been able to pull off. Not mimicking James Wan, doing something a tad bit different, but at least giving us something, giving us a style, giving us something that's not your average and conventional horror movie like all of these other films. And that's why I think Annabelle Creation is worth watching. If you're going to watch one Annabelle movie, watch that one. And the reason why I say that is because Annabelle Comes Home is also, in my opinion, a bad movie. And I hate to say that because it's so fresh, it's brand new, I'm sure it's going to have its fans, and inevitably some people will look back on it and go, well, maybe it wasn't that good. Some people will look back on it and say, you know what, I had a good time with that movie. And this is one where I say, you know, it's understandable if you had fun, because there are fun elements to this film. I think the cast here is really good. McKenna Grace is one of my favorite young talents, not just actors or actresses, talents in Hollywood, and I knew she would show potential, and living up to the daughter of Ed and Lorraine Warren, you have to do a lot here. And this movie did have Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, right? It brings back all the characters. That's one thing that I like about this franchise. It keeps it consistent. It brings in the characters that you want to see. You want to see their faces because they're the ones that we know and love. But it also brought in characters that the cast was good. The characters were written so poorly, and you just didn't care. And this, in particular, Annabelle Comes Home, this was a movie where characters just walked around, in a hallway or in a bathroom or in this or in that, and there was a jump scare, and you can anticipate every jump scare, and you can anticipate every time something wasn't going to be a jump scare when they were trying to swerve you. It's just a repetitive notion. It's something they try to do. They try to surprise the audience, and there is nothing special about this direction. This is just a very familiar feeling horror film in the same vein of The Nun or La Llorona. Now, I do think this is just like a tad bit better than The Nun, and probably about the same as La Llorona, but it's just not a movie I want to go back to or revisit. And I know the Rotten Tomatoes score is a bit higher than I expected it to be, and some people enjoy this movie, and I understand that. And if you have fun with it, sometimes that's all you need with a movie like this, but I'm putting it on the bad tier. That's where we're at in life. Okay, next up is The Conjuring, and let's just go ahead and let's turn this frown upside down, man. Let's put The Conjuring on the awesome tier. You know why? Because the reason why we have all of these other movies is because of The Conjuring, because of what James Wan did with this first film that just spawned an entire franchise and is making that studio a lot of money. Sure, you look back on certain things now, so many years later, and you say, that does feel more cliche now than it felt when I first saw it. That does feel more conventional, but it's because these other Conjuring films have taken beats from that movie and just repeated those same beats in the same fashion without what James Wan gave us in that first Conjuring. And that is just this style and this sense of tension that builds all throughout the entire movie. And then the payoff at the end is awesome. And this movie is actually scary. Yes, there are jump scares, but it's the execution of those jump scares. That's the difference here. Yes, there are things that build and become predictable in its own weird way, but it's the execution on how those pay off towards the end of the movie. It's all about execution with a horror film, and I truly believe The Conjuring is one of the best, most well-executed horror films I've ever seen. Yes, it feels like a studio horror movie, but it also has that artistic nature that I think a lot of these films are lacking. I love the story. I love that family, too. That family that they deal with in that first Conjuring film. When the mother starts going after the children, that is the most emotion I've felt in this entire franchise. And it sets up all the moments to spawn all the other movies. Okay, clearly I love The Conjuring. Now, this is where I'm a bit more baffled than I should be, right? Because when I first saw The Conjuring 2, I thought it was great. Now, I still think it's really, really good, but I'm debating in my head whether or not I should put it on that great tier, because the more I thought about the movie, the more I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't love it as much as I did the first time I watched it, but I did give it a score that warranted it being on the great tier. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put The Conjuring 2 on the great tier, because that's the score that I gave it when I first saw it, but I haven't seen it since I first saw it. So maybe I go back and watch it, and I don't think I'll think it's anything less than good, but maybe I'll put it on the good tier when I watch it for a second time. But when I first saw it, I was thoroughly entertained. I like how the Warrens went out of their element on this one. They're dealing with a brand new family in a different situation, right? It's a different thing going on, but you hit the similar beats and the similar situations with James Wan returning once again, bringing us his style, the style that we know and love. And I was personally captivated by this second story because it switched things up, it turned things on its head, and instead of being worried about the family, and you are worried about the family, you're just as worried about the Warrens in this situation. You feel like they're in over their heads, and honestly, by the end of that film, I thought one of them was going to leave us. I thought we were going to lose one of the Warrens, even though I know it's based on real people and they didn't die in real life, but I was scared, and I think that is the writing of the entire crew behind this movie, and I think that's the direction from James Wan. I think the first two Conjuring movies, they kill it. They knock it out of the park. And if we can get the similar structure and style from The Conjuring 3, even though it's the same director as La Llorona, it's not James Wan, so that has me a bit worried, even though, again, I think James Wan is going to have more of a hand in this one, because The Conjuring, that name, that is more of his baby, as opposed to all of these other films. Guys, I know these tier lists can be very divisive sometimes, but this is how I feel about the Conjuring franchise. I respect it. I think it knows how it's going to make its money back on every single film. It's just in terms of quality and critics and how it's received by the audience, they just don't hit the standards that certain horror movies are hitting nowadays, and I want them to step it up. I truly do. I think we'll start getting there eventually, but right now, is not looking great for the Conjuring franchise as opposed to the first 2 Conjuring films, but that is just my opinion. Those are my thoughts. I'm actually leaving for vacation here in like 4 hours, so I had to record this super quick, even though it's probably a longer video than you guys want it to be, but I appreciate you, truly appreciate you guys watching this video. This was a lot of fun. I really do want to see more out of this franchise, though. I think there's a lot of potential here if James Wan, who is a very busy man, starts getting his hands more on these projects and starts bringing in different directors and different talent. And I do like the fact that he's bringing in directors here that are starting to make names for themselves, like a David F. Sandberg. Thank you guys so much for watching this video once again. The next video on this channel very well may be a Spider-Man Far From Home review. You guys need to be on the lookout. As soon as that embargo lifts, I'll see you very soon.